Welcome to Your Need to Know. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and today we're going to be talking about AARP's Veterans Outreach Programs. Joining me in this segment is Mike DiStilio, a Virginia State AARP volunteer. Thank you so much for being here, Mike.
Catherine, my pleasure.
So we've had other programs and people talking about AARP programs on this show. This is one we haven't spoken about before, but there's actually a remarkable number of veterans in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and you yourself are a veteran. So tell me a little bit about how you got engaged with doing this kind of work with AARP.
Well, I had 25 years in the military, then retired and went into federal government for the Army. So I had 40 years associated with the Army.
Wow.
One of my assignments ended up moving to Virginia, and loved it here and decided to stay. And I think that's what brings a lot of veterans to Virginia. I think it's probably their last assignment or one of their assignments. So we have a pretty substantial number of veterans here in the state.
I think we're second only to California in the number of veterans.
You are, and we have here about roughly a little over 726,000 veterans here in the area. 67% of them, or 2/3 of them, are over 50, and 13% of them are women.
You know, and that's interesting too. Women veterans have kind of different needs
They
than
do.
traditionally, and there are maybe fewer of them, but they just have different. A lot of our systems were designed for returning male veterans. A lot of our facilities are designed for male veterans. So, but it's good to remind people that 10,000 people a day in this country are turning 65. So that's kind of overloading a lot of our systems as well.
It is, and that's where the caregiver comes in, because there are about 55 million military caregivers in the country today, okay? And that equates to about $14 billion worth of caregiving resources.
Right.
And most of that is free.
Because it's family members.
That's correct. Family members, friends,
Right.
relatives, those kinds of things.
Right, and so that represents a lot of time that caregivers are out of the workforce providing, and that's just its own separate thing, simply because when you're not earning money, you're not paying into the Social Security system. I mean, there's just a lot of aspects to choosing to be a caregiver for a loved one who needs assistance.
Right.
But those caregivers need support as well.
Right.
So what are some of the things that AARP helps to do?
I think that's why I went into AARP. I think their motto is to serve but not to be served, and they've always been involved in the medical aspects. They've had many programs of caregiving, and it was only natural that they would branch off, at least in Virginia, on the veterans caregiving. And we're talking about not just the veteran getting care, but also his dependents. We have some veterans now that are caregivers to their spouses.
Correct, right. And in communities work to support families, but we have programs for transportation and all kinds of other things. Tell me a little bit about how veterans health care works with the Medicare. Once somebody ages into Medicare, it's 65.
What happens at you have your Medicare, and then your VA, if you're eligible for your VA, VA can kick in. But there's special needs also. Some of your combat-related injuries require special services. That's one part of your veterans program. Then you also have the aging process, where the World War II generation is, and the Korean War generations, folks are needing help, age-related conditions.
Especially like staying in their homes. And I think this is a lot of, along with the fact that we have not necessarily put a dollar figure accurately on the amount of caregiving that's being provided by family members or friends, but just keeping people in their home actually is better for the person, the veteran, themselves, and it's also less expensive than putting aging people with health problems in facilities or homes. So how does AARP try to support, aging in place?
We have a program we have a program called Home Fit. I'm also a presenter of some of the topics, but Home Fit talks about how do you adapt your house as you get older. How do you make the doors wide enough for a wheelchair or a walker? How do you get into the house? Those kinds of things. A lot of those are, some are minor expenses, some are major expenses, but there's a kind of a roadmap on which you can use. I just had an experience like that. My wife broke her hip. I was a caregiver for a while, and I couldn't get her into the bathroom because the doors were too small. I couldn't get her up the stairs because we had several flight steps. So what the Home Fit does is show you how you can adapt your house. So live in your house as long as you can. We also do brain health, how to maintain your cognitive skills as long as you can. We do where there's a brand new program now called decluttering. All of these fit in with the veteran program.
Absolutely, and that's something we talk about brain health. I just sat in on a presentation not too long ago by AARP about dementia, and the fact that dementia is not a normal part of the aging process. It's not. People do need to work at keeping their cognitive skills, their cognitive reasoning at its peak, and there are ways to do that.
Right. 30% of the aging process is genetic. The rest you might have some control over if you eat sensibly, exercise, and those kind of things. But that all ties in with your veterans. I think all of these programs tie in. The caregiving program, I think, is probably the one that helps the most. It's not that we're supplanting other agencies. What we're trying to do is gather information to give out to the veterans to say, hey, this is what's available to you. Here's mental health agencies that can help you. Here's some veteran agencies. Here's some private organizations that can help you. And basically, it's compiling that and show them how to walk through the labyrinth of agencies.
And we in Northern Virginia are very fortunate. We have a lot of nonprofits here. One that springs to mind is NV Rides, which provides, transportation to seniors, specifically seniors, and the transportation is provided by volunteers, and it's a network of nonprofits that are providing volunteers. People who are caregivers may not know where to find these if they haven't heard of them before. So AARP ends up being a tremendous resource in pointing people to specific kinds of...
And there is a guide, a caregiver's guide, family caregiver's guide, strictly for the military. And what's great here is that there's a list of references in the back about how to get help.
Right, and I see it's got places for notes too.
Right, and I think we'll talk about that.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the hardest things, when my mother had cancer, and keeping up with her doctor's appointments, keeping up with her medications, keeping up with her tests. My sister actually made a 3-ring binder just to keep, and the insurance and the forms and all of the things you had to fill out. It's massive, actually, to be a caregiver for a family member.
And that's what we talk about in caregiving. We talk about First off, you have a veteran. You have an individual who's probably been independent most of his or her life. Now it's time to talk that, listen, you can't live the way you're living anymore because it's dangerous to you, you're falling down, you need help. And a lot of older folks resent that. And I can talk from experience with my dad. My dad's 97 years old, he's a World War II veteran.
Wow.
And now he's starting to fail. And we had to move him out of the house because the house was no longer safe for him. We moved him into an efficiency apartment, and he's able to cook for himself. He does a little housekeeping, but we had to make a plan. First, we talked it over with him, and that was not easy. We finally got him to agree, and then we made a plan, exactly like you said. Who's the primary caregiver? Who's going to intercede for him with the doctors? Who's going to set up the appointments? Who's going to handle his finances? Who's going to provide him with food? I'm fortunate my 2 sisters have been terrific with this. One sister handles the appointments. The other sister takes him to the appointments. I handle his VA benefits, I handle his bricklayer union pension, that kind of thing. So it's working as a team. And you know, when they need help, they'll call me up and say, you need to come up.
And that's a lot to keep track of. One of the shows I have done on driver safety was talking about having that all-important conversation about when it's not safe for people to drive anymore. And that's taking away that sort of autonomy is probably next to having to move from your home. Taking away the ability to go where you want, when you want, you know, is very difficult. It makes people feel, you know, as if they are reliant on everybody for everything.
Yeah, and you know, when my dad was he didn't give up his car until he was 90 years old.
My aunt was 93.
Yeah, and it took a lot to get him
to relinquish the keys.
Right.
And it was like, and again, you know, as far as like the decluttering, when you have to move somebody, I think one of the hardest aspects of moving somebody who is 94 years old is what do you do with all of their things? And this is a very emotional, terribly
Right.
emotional thing for the person, for the family. And this is where these programs, AARP is trying to help with
Right.
some guidance, with some.
I think with the caregiving, especially with the caregiving, that seems to be the one, sooner or later everyone's going to need it. Either you're going to be
That's true.
You're going to be on the receiving end of caregiving, or you're going to be giving caregiving.
That's true. That is so
and,
true.
So I think the other thing is besides making a plan and building a team, I think the other thing is seek professional support, because you cannot do it by yourself.
It is too overwhelming.
You have to research the agencies that are available to you, and a lot of times people don't know what's available to them, and that's where I think the Caregiver's Guide helps out a lot.
I also think it's where the ambassador program comes in. AARP provides people like you to speak to all kinds of groups.
Right.
I think you're looking for a group that has 15 people attending.
Right.
But
Correct.
it might be a faith-based organization, it might be
Right.
assisted living organization, or someplace where.
We have done presentations for the VFW, the DAV.
Right.
It's just another venue that we can reach out and touch some of the veterans, and I think that's the important thing.
Well, I want to say thank you, Mike, so much for being here. This has been absolutely illuminating, and I hope you'll join us after the break.
Let me tell you about the toughest guy on earth. He does the work of 2 jobs, but only gets paid for one. He's tough enough to feed the man that gave him a lifetime of nourishment.
He has the crazy strength to lift the man that raised him up without even flinching.
That's right. No employee of the month bonus check here. This guy, no, this warrior, will always be by his father's side, even if his dad will hardly remember. Good luck finding a gym to train for that. If this guy isn't the toughest guy on the planet, then I don't know who is. Caregiving is tougher than tough. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Maria, so how's work?
It was 4th period biology. Our students just weren't getting how easily viruses spread. So Miss Bella and I had them role play a zombie virus outbreak. By the time they had all learned the lesson, all the living were dead. Hey, how's your job going?
That big sales meeting I planned? Next year, I might get to go.
Cool.
Welcome back to Your Need to Know. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and we are talking about AARP's Veterans Outreach Program. And we are talking in this segment with Donna Newman Robinson. Thank you so much for being here, Donna.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
Well, so I'm talking to another Army veteran
Yes, you are. Yes,
and
you
a
are.
nurse.
Yes, you are.
So tell me a little bit about what drew you to doing this kind of work, going out into the public and helping people to understand the services and programs that will support veterans and their families.
Absolutely. I retired from the Army in the Army Nurse Corps in year 2000. So I'm dating myself. I'm like almost 20 years post-retirement. And over those years, since those years, I was still in transition and didn't really know it. And because like 13 nursing jobs later, I discovered it was meant for me to do something else. But what I found through some work, and I was in Atlanta, Georgia at the time, that I really wanted to continue to serve and to share. And where did I learn how to serve? Aha moment with the military. And so through some real deep processing, I figured that, you know, Donna, if you're still in transition, I know your sister veterans are as well. And because of that, I know how women veterans think because I am one. So as a result of a lot of research and just networking with other veteran organizations in the Atlanta area, I decided to become a professional life coach. So I got my designation as a certified professional coach, specialized in transition. And who did I work with? Women veterans. So my work with my sweet spot is, you know, really helping women veterans find out what their next step is after military service.
What their encore is. That's
what their
encore is.
So my one of my brand names I kind of use when I'm out speaking about that is the next mission is you.
Ooh, I like that so much.
Yes.
I
It's
like
very
that
relevant.
so much.
It really is, because of what I found that my sister veterans really struggled with identity after the uniform came off. And as you know, we have our own unique needs, and through that information and that connecting with other organizations, it was really a process to educate others about our needs. You know, women veterans who have children, women
Right.
veterans, the organizations were really not set up to support women veterans with children, homeless women veterans with children.
And that is a problem.
It is a problem, ongoing problem, especially since post 9/11.
Right.
So as a result of that, of course, that was near and dear to my heart. And in working with other veteran organizations, I was able to really help partner with the Vietnam Veteran Commemorative Program while I was in Georgia. And when I relocated back to this area 3 years ago, I reached out to Janaea Luck, who is a Central Virginia Associate Director, and told her about the work that I did with the veteran population. And she said, oh my gosh, let's just go ahead and do that here. Let's really try to promote and work with and collaborate with Department of Defense and the commemorative program for Vietnam veterans. And so that took on another whole area of its own, and so we were able to really get involved with a lot of the communities who felt that the Vietnam veterans were not really recognized, as we know from history.
Yes.
So we took on that with love and labor to go out into the communities, into the churches, and you know, just to really identify and recognize and honor our Vietnam veterans through pinning. So we, as AARP volunteers, we were able to present a proclamation, a copy of the proclamation signed by President Obama, as well as a pin, Vietnam veteran pin, and an AARP coin, challenge coin. So that's been something that's, in the last 3 years, has been really rewarding for me. And along with that, as my cohort, Mike DeScilio, mentioned earlier, the changes in, as far as health that I'm have been more focused about, is what is really happening to us as we age.
Right.
From a health standpoint. And also what I've found and discovered in working in the community is that as a veteran, we were so used to being conditioned to thinking that everything that we would need is through the Veterans Administration system, and that is clearly not true.
Yeah.
And if we don't know, we don't know.
Yeah, people just seem to think if you're a veteran, the VA will take care of everything.
Absolutely. That is such a misnomer, and even worse now. And as you stated earlier, we are aging, you know, we are living longer, we are disrupting aging as far as AARP is concerned. So it really excites me to share that, the knowledge, the resources that AARP has for our seniors and our veterans that are over 50.
You know, and sitting here listening to you, you know, we're losing so many World War II veterans every day. They're in their 90s, the ones that are left. And the needs that they had are somewhat different from Vietnam vets.
Yes.
You know, Vietnam, each war had its own thing.
Absolutely.
You know, Agent Orange was a problem in Vietnam. And it has caused dramatic health problems
Yes.
for that war. And with Iraq and Afghanistan, you have IEDs.
Yes.
You know, the loss of limbs and the kinds of brain injuries from IEDs. So if you think about how warfare has changed, the needs, the ongoing needs of veterans of different wars require
Absolutely.
something very specific.
Absolutely. And there's still a lot of research out there, because what I've discovered in my experience as a former military nurse is that if our veterans, or even if our military members who are coming back, have not really been recognized in the system as far as their, you know, because a lot of their symptoms are quite insidious. If it's
Right.
not a amputation,
Right.
you know, some symptoms develop later in life. And if there isn't proper medical documentation, so you have that challenge to prove that. So I could speak to that with Desert Storm, because I was
Oh,
in
that's right.
that era.
Desert Storm, I remember that. Yes.
Yes. So with post 9/11 is what we're dealing with now. Like you said, the IEDs, the injuries that they come back with. You know, of course, DOD did not expect to have the type of life-threatening injuries where soldiers and military members have survived,
Right.
which is tapped into those resources even more so.
Well, you're right. And you know, these are things that I don't think we all think about. And I would go even further to say that women veterans probably aren't even recognized as veterans, mainly because we don't think of women serving in the military. You were a nurse, but now, you know, women flying combat missions like Tammy Duckworth, you know, now you've got women helicopter pilots and fighter pilots. And so once you know, a woman removes that uniform,
Yes.
people are not presuming, as you might with a man,
Yes.
that she is a veteran. That must be
Yes.
psychologically
It is.
very, very hard.
Absolutely, because normally we don't wear caps
Right.
that say we served.
Right.
And my husband is a Vietnam veteran. He wears a cap every day. And when we're together, he always gets approached and say, "Thank you for your service." And I'm standing right there next to him. So sometimes he said, "Well, you know, my wife served too." What? She served. She did 20 years. But that's one of the things that's always a challenge for the woman veteran. And we don't normally self-identify. That's
Right.
not something we do right off the bat when we introduce ourselves. I think that's changing, but it's not something that we're comfortable doing.
Yeah,
it
it's very interesting, and women wear so many hats and have so many roles that, you know, being a veteran or having served in the military is probably one of many other, you know, identifiers. There's somebody's spouse or mother or grandma, or they've gone on to another career.
Yes.
Where people know them by that role and not
Yes.
necessarily by the fact that they served the country.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
So when you go out to talk to groups, what kind of groups are you talking to? And, you know,
I find it very enlightening to talk to most of the groups are male groups.
yeah.
What I've done, and one of my goals is to really connect more with the other service organizations, DAV,
Okay.
Disabled Veterans, VFW, organizations where they really are looking at trying to attract the younger veteran
Right.
or the female veteran.
Right.
So my question to them is always, do you have a female veteran in a leadership position? Because you have to have someone there to identify with us, to attract us there. So
That's a
sometime-
great point.
Yes, because those are the questions I asked before I joined.
Right.
And that's what I asked my local DAV up in Fredericksburg. Do you have a female commander? And I was surprised that he said yes. And I said, well, sign me up. So it takes things like that, those examples, to really attract our younger post 9/11 veterans, or the ones who are, you know, over 50, or even those who are in the VA system but unaware of resources in our community, such as AARP. And I know, as I mentioned, one of my goals is to help facilitate more partnering with those veteran service organizations and AARP. We have had some conversations around that. It just needs to continue, and because they need to know. And when I'm out servicing other communities, or if I'm tabling, I'm always speaking about veteran resources and what they, because it's all about the culture and how we age.
Right, right.
As soon as you see a sign that says AARP, they say, oh, no, I'm not ready.
So I was about to say, you keep saying over 50, over 50, over 50.
Yeah.
I get all those things in the mail too, and I'm like, but I'm not a senior citizen, but I'm not. I'm in my 50s.
Right.
And so, but it's over 50 for
Yes.
AARP, but
Yes.
most of us are thinking over 65 because so many other programs kick in over 65.
Right.
And so internally, we do not see ourselves in our 50s as
True.
being senior citizens. And
Yes.
so AARP, I think, has worked very hard to say there's a point at which you need to embrace the fact that you're aging and you have specific needs, and AARP is designed for
Absolutely.
that.
And even for those that are over 50, they have parents
Yeah,
that are aging,
that's
that they
so
can
true.
get that information for their parents. So I do come back with that. But you have a parent who can really benefit from this resource. So it's
That's
like,
excellent.
oh.
That's excellent, Donna. Make them feel better about themselves. No, not you, your parent.
Absolutely.
That's why we're here.
Absolutely. So when I go out and I present like brain health, I give a lot. It's very interactive. So my audience is mostly women over 65. A lot of church groups, and it's just we all share about what helps us to stay healthy. To keep our brain sharp, and it's really something I enjoy because I demand it to be interactive. I share a lot about my experiences, and as long as we sit around and talk about it, we all are learning from each other.
Well, and so I want to encourage people at home too to call AARP. You have wonderful speakers and ambassadors. They'll come and speak to any group. They do ask for 15 people.
Yes.
But these are the kinds of things that veterans in particular, or those caregiving for veterans,
Absolutely.
need to know. And this at home is what you need to know about the AARP Veterans Outreach Program. So please reach out.